Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Shannon Scott. Ballooning costs and no reduction in risk. That's what Ottawa's environmental watchdog has found is happening in the North's contaminated sites. Independent auditor's report was released today, and it's critical of how the federal government is handling these sites and calls the financial burden of maintaining them enormous. The CBC's Leonie Lambrink reports.
The NWT's Giant Mine and the Yukon's Faro Mine feature prominently in the report. They are case studies looked at as examples of how the federal government handles large, high-risk abandoned mines. Canada's Commissioner of Environment and Sustainable Development did not like what he saw. At both sites, contamination persists, and neither have perpetual care plans or a comprehensive plan for adapting to climate change. The commissioner also found remediation costs had ballooned. The federal government's financial liability for 24,000 contaminated sites across Canada was once pegged at $2.9 billion. Now it's more than $10 billion.
This is an enormous financial burden on taxpayers and represents a failure to properly implement the polluter pays principle, as many private sector sites had to be taken over by the federal government.
The audit also looked at local benefits. It says remediation jobs are an opportunity for reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. The report found that although people in remote northern communities suffered from exposure to contaminants, they are not benefiting from the cleanups. It recommends having more Indigenous people involved in the process. Leonie Lambrink, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Some people in Yellowknife say they're reaching the end of their rope. Their neighborhood has been experiencing constant water main breaks, repeatedly flooding the area and their properties. The people who live there want a long-term solution from the city. The CBC's Luke Carroll has been reporting on this, and he joins me here in studio. So Luke, water and housing, not a great mix. What's going on here?
Yeah, so we're talking about the 49A Avenue area of Yellowknife. So this is between Niven and Old Town. I've spoken with more than a half dozen people who live in that neighborhood, and they're frustrated. There were kind of two issues going on here. One is slumping, and then there's flooding. A lot of it. There's been 7 water main breaks since February, Shannon.
7. That is a lot of water main breaks. So how are residents being affected by all of this?
Yeah, so I spoke with Alex Giroux. She's a resident of this neighborhood, and she walked me around through the damaged streets and showed me the slumps and the various sites where the pipes broke.
Some of us are going to have to get our trailers re-leveled in the spring. We're dealing with flooded yards. We're dealing with ice buildup in places where there shouldn't be ice. We've got a number of people who've had backyards, front yards, partially or completely dug up.
So Giroux says, you know, this is really stressful for almost everyone in the neighborhood, Shannon.
So I'm sure it is stressful. I can only imagine being surrounded by 7 floods since February, water main breaks since February. Is there anything the city's doing about this?
Yeah, so Chris Greencorn is the city's director of public works. So he acknowledges the shifting ground is a big problem. So Greencorn said the plan is to replace pipes that connect to the water mains and kind of other piping materials, and all this is going to be done this summer.
Temper expectations in that it's not a full-scale underground works program, because we don't have the time or the budget or frankly the engineer design to do it. So the other thing worth mentioning on that particular street is that we were really trying to minimize the amount of time that these folks are going to be under construction, with the extensive work at Lift Station 1 and the force main associated with it that comes up Franklin Avenue, along with major works planned for Franklin Hill in the paving realm in 2026. This neighborhood is either going to be a detour or under construction for the better part of 5 years.
So he says the water main itself is in good shape and it isn't bending or breaking, which is really good news, because that would be an even more expensive fix and it would take years to even start that work. But some residents worry that this isn't going to fix the real problem, Shannon.
Why are they worried about that?
Yeah, so one of the concerns is that they're fixing the pipes, but they're not fixing what's causing the breaks in the pipes. So as the ground continues to shift, they worry these pipes will wear and break as well. So one person I spoke to was Julia Kuzi, who she lives in front of this massive puddle that's there, which is sinking her metal fence, and it requires rubber boots for her to take out her garbage. And she's worried the city isn't aware of the extent of the damage, and she wants more reassurance.
Well, I think that they need to do a serious survey. I saw something mentioned about cameras, but I think they need to do a pretty extensive search. The road behind me has been sinking for years, and it has just escalated over the past several. So problems seem to be moving further and further up the road. So far, they would patch a particular spot, they would fix a specific leak, and it never appeared, and I never heard anything. I never got any feedback that they had cameras or they'd actually done any sort of extensive searching. So I don't know if they really know what's underneath there.
So Greencorn says they have gone, underground with exploratory video, and he's confident that at least the water main is in good shape, Shannon.
All right, so the city's going to replace some pipes, but I guess I'm curious if there's longer term solutions to this problem.
Yeah, so I reached out to the city about that, and I didn't get a response, at least by deadline. There's been kind of mentionings of it, but just following up on that, I spoke with a geotechnical engineer named Ed Hove. So he doesn't have site-specific knowledge, and he says it very well could be just freezing that's causing these breaks in the pipes. But he says another thing that has been considered is that the slumping is being caused by seasonal frost. So if this is the case, there's two possible solutions for it.
One way is to try and remove some of that problematic soil and replace it with a stable soil. So like gravel.
The other option is to dig and to insert insulation into the ground kind of above the pipes. But, there's obviously we haven't heard of any long-term plan like that. So the homeowners themselves will have to keep dealing with the slumping at least until, something like that is completed.
All right, Luke, could be a long road for them. Thanks for your work on this.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
In Whitehorse, construction of a 75-meter-long wall at the base of Robert Service Way escarpment got started today. The wall, which will be 2 meters tall once it's done, is a precaution against spring melt as it continues. The goal is to stop landslides from hitting the highway. The city says the wall will be similar to a barrier that's already been installed, but will give further protection as weather warms. The city says there haven't been any significant slides so far this spring. Construction is not expected to disrupt traffic. A major ice jam in the Klondike River that had emergency officials in Dawson City concerned has opened up. The jam at the Klondike Highway Bridge broke and flushed through to the Yukon River last night, lowering water levels by 1.7 meters at the bridge. Emergency officials say the flood warning and high stream flow advisory for the area have ended, and the evacuation alert for the Klondike River Valley has been lifted.
Having gone through this a few times last year where we did see a lot of people affected, I do think that, unfortunately there was still at least one property that was negatively impacted by the river this year. And so it's not all positive news, but I think that we're really happy that we dodged a bullet, so to speak, relative to any further damage this year. And so we can rest easy as far as that goes.
Robitaille says 2 ice jams are still in place at Henderson Corner and the Bear Creek subdivision, but he says those don't present a risk for flooding. In the Northwest Territories, it's been over a year since more than a dozen cabins and camps were washed away along the Peel River in the Mackenzie Delta during spring flooding. But one of the owners says he's still struggling to get funding to rebuild. The CBC's Des Loreen has more.
I can use the top part. If I can't do that.
Bill Pedromatis is doing his best to rebuild his family's camp at 8 Miles. He says his wife applied for 2 different flood relief fundings from the Gwich'in Tribal Council, but they were told both applications were lost. He says now they won't return his calls.
My wife tried to phone them to get an answer, nobody willing to talk to us.
Pedromitis applied for the $4,500 made available to people who lost their cabins, and for the $500 worth of building supplies. Pedromitis says he contacted the GTC. They were visited by the Grand Chief, and after that they got the $4,500, but that he's still waiting for the building supplies. Bernice Francis's cabin upriver was also hit by the flood. She said she had no issues applying and getting approved for both relief fundings.
We bought some material with that, and then I got a generator and chainsaw and some other items that we lost.
We reached out to the GTC to find out why Pedromitis has faced delays while others haven't. The GTC did not reply to a request for an interview. Des Loreen, CBC News, Inuvik.
To Nunavut now, where the territory's Information and Privacy Commissioner says the Department of Health has breached an employee's privacy. Commissioner Graham Steele said the employee's personal information was shared with other staff in an email. He said the department's breach was pretty minor, but he described a dysfunctional workplace. In investigating the privacy complaint, Steele said there was tension between employees and managers. He said he would leave it to the health department to respond to the privacy breach, and said senior managers should address the workplace culture as well. CBC News has reached out to the Department of Health, but so far we haven't heard back. For the first time, Nunavut has a report card on child poverty in the territory. The research, co-authored by Iqaluit and the advocacy group Campaign 2000, details the harsh realities of Nunavut's most vulnerable. 35.8% of children in Nunavut come from low-income households, according to 2021 Statistics Canada figures. But what struck Iqaluit's president is the rate of food insecurity since Nutrition North was introduced.
Food insecurity is an issue that's starting to be felt by broader audiences, but it was really shocking to hear that despite the Nutrition North program having been in place for decades at this point and having undergone several revisions, food insecurity is actually at an all-time high of almost 50%.
The report also criticizes the lack of sufficient data on poverty in the territory. It's an issue Iqaluit Sina MLA Janet Pitsiolak-Brewster says she's brought up in the legislature.
The response from the government of Nunavut is usually that there are capacity issues and that they're working on it, that it's a historical problem. So it feels like they're not taking full responsibility.
Iqaluit's president says she hopes the report will help inform policymakers.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
Vanessa likes gymnastics. She loves soccer. She loves to ride her bike. She loves to stay at the park as long as she can. She shows me every day that she can do anything she puts her mind to. The WARAMPS is able to provide Vanessa with the devices and support that she needs because of the generosity of the public. Nothing will stop her. Any help that she ever needs is right there because of your generosity.
Thank you!
Makimuksak palilaw kapta awla yina lakpo kugyang mulo amalo kokbiyo yamo kinga diwaling mulo pangolo asyang miu muna toy muino daily tapang makimuksak palilaw sumo mutay mabuat taling ni pilariyo lak sumo inuit amichwalu walang muta.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
What does it take to reach the top? Join me, Ian Hannamansing, as I get to know some truly inspirational people who share the secrets of their success.
If you want to talk about one moment, it's a moment where I would live or die.
It changed everything on CBC News Explore.
Moments that are so on trend right now. Ticket pricing, artificial intelligence, being a Swiftie, wild fashion trends, showbiz, and cancel culture. Join me, Alameen Abdul-Mahmoud, for Commotion, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sipping on a bit of Henny, can I get a little
They've been popping up across the north for a while now, but it seems the move towards self-checkouts could be coming to an end. A lot of customers don't like them, and now store owners are finding the machines aren't the money savers they've been hoping for. Sophia Harris has that story.
The all self-checkout cashierless store, once seen as the future, is now in question. Walmart recently ditched self-checkout at 6 U.S. locations.
Different animal?
At least 6 Canadian Tires in Ontario have done the same. This giant Tiger discount store, also in Ontario, pulled all its self-checkouts just 2 weeks ago.
I thought it was great. I like the person-to-person contact. You can't say to a machine, have a good day.
Giant Tiger says it scrapped self-checkout here because many customers didn't like it. But some experts say it's often the added costs that are making retailers backtrack.
Stores anticipated that this technology would allow them to significantly reduce labor costs. And what they found was that actually they couldn't eliminate a lot of the cashiers because they needed the cashiers there in part to deter shoplifting.
The Retail Council of Canada says some of the culprits are organized gangs of thieves who neglect to scan pricey items while unattended at self-checkout.
It could very well be 3 very expensive bottles of face cream. It could be specialized baby formula. And they target merchandise that they know has high value on the street.
Why am I under arrest?
Some retailers don't like to talk about self-checkout theft. But U.S. discount chain Dollar General and Walmart recently admitted they're pulling self-checkouts from selected stores due to theft.
There are a few stores where we've made the decision that they'll come out of. Retail shrinkage is a cost, so we want to make sure that the checkout process is accurate.
What do you think of the store removing its self-checkout?
I think it's great. Keeps people employed.
Stores replacing self-checkout machines with cashiers. It's a turn of events few saw coming. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Stratford, Ontario.
With plastics piling up in landfills, efforts are underway to find biodegradable solutions. Researchers at the University of Saskatchewan are creating a new kind of food wrap from fava beans, and they invited CBC inside the lab for a closer look.
It looks like synthetic packaging, but it's made of fava bean proteins. My name's Mike Nickerson from the Department of Food and Bioproduct Sciences at the University of Saskatchewan, and we're developing these biodegradable films for the food sector. There's a tremendous amount of petroleum-based saran wraps, plastic. If you go to the meat counter, you have the styrofoam base, the tray, and then there's a nice plastic wrap over top. And we're trying to reduce that going into landfills. We're moving away from those plastic-type materials in all sectors, and this is one sector that we really need to do, and this bio-based packaging will help achieve that. This packaging is biodegradable. We can take it off our meat product. We can then put it into the green bin or your garden. Because it's all food grade materials, it's made out of proteins, it's going to degrade and add nutrients to the soil. So it's a win-win for the environment. So we're using fava bean protein, which is a great product. We're producing a lot of this on the prairies. To make these films, we take these ingredients and we formulate them into a film forming solution, which we then cast in various molds to create that certain thickness of those films. And then after we set the films, we move over to condition them in some humidity control chambers. And then afterwards, we can pull them out and have that flexibility and strength of these films to then go into the packaging area. And one of the prototypes that we're working on is how can we enhance the shelf life of fresh meat products. So we're doing a shelf life study on fresh meat. So we have active ingredients that are really working to inhibit the growth of spoilage bacteria. And we're increasing the shelf life quite a bit in these fresh meats. So we're really excited to move on to phase 2 and proof of concept of this type of packaging.
A new documentary series is highlighting the work Indigenous teens are doing to improve their communities. Hosted by Iqaluit's Anna Lamb, Warrior Up features youth from across the country and the north, including Yellowknife's Cole Clark and Dylan Hope. The CBC's Mahnor Mubarak has more.
The series focuses on youth being everyday warriors, inspiring them to take action,
Possibilities include raising awareness on missing and murdered Indigenous women or holding a run to honor residential school survivors. Lam says it's easy to get lost in issues that plague her community, like substance abuse and suicide.
And to see Indigenous youth who acknowledge that, who understand that, who also see that, but see a future beyond it as well, and see a world where that's not what defines us. Those statistics aren't what define us. That history is important to us, but it doesn't define us.
Lam says showcasing the good youth are doing is important. One of the teens she met for the series is Nevaeh Pine. She organized a school assembly to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women.
My whole goal is to inspire other youth to raise their voice and work together, because I believe when all our voices come together, we are stronger as one.
Pine says she hopes her story will inspire other youth. The series will start airing on APTN in May. Mahnur Mubarak, CBC News, Iqaluit.
A new wellness program for youth is coming to Nunavik to help address their mental health needs. The initiative is called Open Space Nunavik, and it will include a week of activities in different communities to help youth work through personal issues. The head of the Nunavik Regional Board of Health and Social Services says the needs of youth today are very different from when she was young.
Our way of life culturally has changed environmentally, and technology has played a big role in our society today. So it's very heavy at times to try to make it more culturally relevant in a very fast-changing world.
The Open Space Initiative is being rolled out across Quebec. Watkins says her region's services will be tailored to meet the specific needs of Nunavik youth, with culturally relevant inclusions like natural healers for addictions programs. Well, as we were talking about yesterday on the show, tomorrow is the first official day of the NWT wildfire season, and crews are already busy fighting overwintering fires near Fort Smith. But one man in Yellowknife is preparing to take on the fight himself. Garth Walbridge has bought his very own fire truck. And as a former firefighter, he hopes to keep his property on Pontoon Lake pristine and picturesque. Mark Winkler met up with him and went for a ride.
And here we are, a 1995 Ford single axle fire truck with a 1,250 gallon tank on it. The town of Hay River last year, the fire department, with the big fires in and around Hay River, but of course right in Hay River, the fire department actually took this truck. You know, either they asked the owner at the time or the owner offered it up. The fire department took it, tested everything, knew it was available. For instance, maybe if they lost one of their pieces of what we call an apparatus in a fire there, they would have had this as a backup. So I know it works. So we'll go for a ride around the neighborhood.
Garth, I've seen two drivers stare really hard at this fire truck and you driving it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's not every day you see a fire truck running around the neighborhood. And we are in an industrial park as we're doing this, so probably not completely wild and crazy.
Are there any other people in the territory who own a fire truck to your knowledge?
I have no knowledge of that. I think it would be reasonable to assume probably not. Although people with a remote camp or whatnot, certainly they would have a good chance they'd have their own fire department. Like I know up at the diamond mines, they have very high quality, good quality equipment.
Hey, there's another. That's a fire truck too?
Yeah, there's another one there. It's been there for years. I can only assume that one of the things that happens, and quite reasonably so, if a fire department gets a new apparatus, they tend with the old one, if it's now surplus and they've got to get rid of it, they of course take all of the hose off of it. Like I'll probably spend another couple of $1,000s this coming week just buying hose to get some complement of hose out of this truck. You want to shoot the beacon?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm very fortunate to be able to have the financial resources to own this. and I hope I never have to use it, but I'm lucky to have it. I'll admit, just like you guys, for your listeners, Carson is with us. He's a videographer here, and Mark Winkler. The smiles on their face are probably even bigger than the smiles on my face. The smile on my face. Great to talk to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, I was once again struck by some of the temperatures we were seeing on that board tonight. Tonight it was Dawson City at 16 degrees tomorrow that caught my attention. I took a look at Environment Canada's website, and normal for Dawson this time of year is 12, so 16 right about normal. But by Friday and Saturday, you're going to be in upwards of 20 degrees in Dawson City, so a hot weekend on the way for sure. That is our show for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Shannon Scott. We will be back tomorrow night at our regular time. We'll see you then. Have a great night.
What happens when we transform the country into one massive obstacle course? 20 total strangers are about to find out.
Okay, game on!
Relationships will be forged and crushed.
I want to rip their heads up.
In an all-out battle for glory.
Oh my God! I'm glad that there's cameras around. Yeah, me too. Do it in, replay.
Only one thing's for sure. They are not ready for what's coming.
Let's go, baby!
So good.
Please be careful.
I'm excited, dude. Me too. We're back with Crime Scene Kitchen. It's a bold choice.
Yes, honey.
It's a very straightforward recipe. This is going to be an absolute showstopper. That's what I'm talking about right there.
Woo!
Yeah. I murdered a donut.
That's a crime scene.
Hello. Dad is the master of marketing.
So handsome, both of them. How big is my face? Bigger.
Dad's a superstar wherever he goes.
2, 1. Go back to work. Daddy, marketing works.
Her particular skill set can be helpful to us.
She's a con artist.
I need to get off that boat and back to being a full-time detective, and you need to stay out of prison. The best way we do that is to keep our heads down and do as we're told.
Sipping on a bit of Henny. Can I get a little Remy? Feeling heavy. Chilling, but I'm feeling ready. Pulled up in a big old Chevy. Dance floor stops and me gal them drops. Queen with the locks and the crown on top. Feet in a box, never sound on pause. If it ain't the Henny, give me crown on rocks.
What do we know
about that with Andrew Chang?
I think we can explain.
Watch free on CBC Gem.